Hi guys, you're listening to Ebird Online, and I'm doing a special today on Before the 90 Days. So I'm going to be talking about Ashley and Omar, and I'm going to be picking apart all the reasons for the different types of behaviour we've had from Ashley, Omar and from Terri. And I'm going to be giving you the 7 reasons that I think prove that Omar is simply using Ashley just to get into the States. Just before I start, I just need to tell you, thank you guys so much. Thank you for all your comments. Some of them are in great detail. And next week my extra video is going to be going over all of your comments, picking out the best ones and doing what I do best, dissecting them word for word. Also a massive thank you for everyone that's subscribed. I finally hit my 3,000 subscriber mark. It's all onwards and upwards from here. If you haven't yet subscribed, please join our family. It really is so much fun. And I have a special treat for you on Saturday, and that's going to be my very first story time. So I'm just basically going to do funny or amusing stories of things that have happened to me. Right, let's get into it. Avery and Omar. So I'm going to go over what happened this week, which was not that much really. And then I'm going to get into dissecting everything that we've seen so far. So we first catch up with them in the hotel room, and Avery and her mum Terri are laying on the bed, and it's very clear that Terri sees this as her last chance to obstruct this wedding. She starts questioning Avery about Omar's intentions. Avery tells her his priorities are not to come to America. We can live in Lebanon, Dubai, Malaysia. But Terry's not having any of it. Terri says, you're starting to see what happened. He found you for a visa. And Terri tells us that Avery is very naive and very easily manipulated. She tells her daughter, I've never seen anybody come in and sweep you off your feet like you've never been swept before. Do you think it was weird that he found you on an American Muslim dating site? Do you think that he might just want you for a visa? And Avery snaps back, if he wanted to just find someone for a visa, he would have just found someone. Terri very quietly says, and you're here. Avery, he found you. But Avery still can't see it, and she turns on the waterworks, and this is the clearest sign to me that in Avery we deal with a child. Some 19-year-olds are really forward and really mature. I don't find Avery to be so. And it was very clear when I saw her learning how to write her name in Arabic with Omar in the hotel room, and watching them interact was just like watching 2 kids playing. And like I said in my earlier video, they are playing. Avery and Omar are playing Muslims and dentists. Terri got rid of Omar so that she could better deprogram her daughter, but there's just no getting through to Avery. So Avery decides to turn tack, and this is a side of Avery that I really don't like. She had a really smarmy, self-satisfied look on her face, and she said, well, have you ever considered we may not even go to the USA? We may just go somewhere else. We may go to Dubai. We could live in Lebanon. There's so many places. And guys, honestly, if I'd have said something like that to my mum with that look on my face, no matter what it was that I was saying, she would have given me a thick ear. I don't know how Terri held herself back. But Terri countered with, you cannot live in Dubai. How can you live in Lebanon? You're only allowed to stay here for a very few days. And Ashley snaps, he's going to be a periodontist. Going to be. As soon as he gets that job, he can live in Dubai, Lebanon, wherever he wants. As soon as he gets that job. And how long will that take, Avery? And she continued, he's sick of people like you and other people accusing him of just wanting me just for my visa. That must mean that Omar's sick of himself. Terri said, but what about his personality? He might just be putting a nice personality on. And at this point, Avery storms out to see him. And she said, I'm going to go and grab him, and I'm going to ask him if he wants to live outside of the States. Avery, he already lives outside of the States, and nothing's set to change that from what I see. And so she storms outside, only to find no Omar. Where could he be? Very interesting. Terri's worried because she knows that Avery hasn't accepted that there are real risks with this marriage. But Avery said, no, he's serious about me. Don't question our love. Terri's confused. What's the rush on the marriage? Because we want to be together, and Muslims must be married to be together. Avery, one quick look at Muslims in the UK and one quick look at Muslims in the US tells me that many Muslims are together and they are not yet married. I do admit, if you've got strict parents, lucky for you because you don't, you might have to do a little bit of secret squirrel, but it does make sense to check out who you're going out with a little bit more than 2 days. And it comes to something when I have to admit that Angela, of Angela and Michael fame, is more cautious about bringing someone into the United States than you are, Avery. Yes, Angela. Think about that. And Avery tells the VT all she wants is her mum's approval. You'll never get it. And she said, either I'm very naive or I'm right. Avery, that's not the kind of sentence that you want to go into a marriage with. Either I'm naive or I'm right. And she says, we'll see eventually. Avery, we can see now. You're bloody naive. And we see next week things set to get juicy because Syria's most docile student realises that they need approval from the Islamic court to get married, and it seems as if the wedding may not go ahead. And Avery's moaning again. My mum came all the way from the United States to Lebanon to see me get married, and now that may not even happen. She should have said, my mum came all the way from the United States to Lebanon to thwart my marriage. It seems like this is going to happen. So guys, let's just get to the juicy part. Let's look at the evidence for and against Omar. So the first thing that I have a problem with is that he sent Avery's engagement ring to her in the post. And I think to myself, if you're really genuinely in love with somebody, don't you want to wait until you see them so you can get down on one knee and so that you can put the ring on? And the joy on their face as they first see the ring, you're missing all of that. And that's the first thing that makes me think that Omar is less than genuine. Secondly, he hit Avery up on a dating site for Muslims in America. What are you doing on a dating site for people in America when you're in Syria? You know you're not allowed in America, so you know that it will be a gargantuan task to get you into America, over the wall, around Trump and through ICE. Who do you think you are, some sort of Marvel dentist? So the only real reason that you pretended in the first instance to be already in America is because you wanted to get married and get into America. You wanted to trick somebody, and you found that somebody, as Terri said, that somebody was Avery. The third reason that I have for thinking that he's dodgy is that he tried to word Terri down on the dowry. So Terri, as we know, started at 10k, which I thought was a trifling amount anyway, and he looked faux shocked at 10k. And he managed to whittle her down to 6k. This tells me that he finds it highly likely that he'll be getting divorced from her and he'll have to actually pay this amount of money. Now, as we all know, the chances are if he gets divorced and they're in Dubai and they're in one of these other countries they dream of, the chances are Avery won't be able to chase him through every court in the land trying to get a proper settlement from him. You know, like a UK or a US every month settlement. But because he is a Muslim and he wants to stay true to Islamic law, he would want to give this 6k as his dowry so that he complies with his God. But let's look into it in a bit more detail. He tells us that it should be 8% of your salary. Now, Avery's already just said he's studying to be a periodontist. Now, I'm not imagining that they're going to get divorced before he finishes being a student. And the average wage for a periodontist in America is £171,000 a year. That's just the average. So imagine if it's 10 years down the line, that could be an awful lot more. But even at that level, the dowry should be, on his own words, 8%. It should be 8%. The dowry should be just under 14 grand. Why did you try so hard to whittle it down to 6 grand, Omar? Because you knew at some point you'd be paying. The fourth reason is that when Avery talked about going and living in Syria, he tried to talk her out of it. And the reason was that he thought she might come to Syria, realise she doesn't like it, and will end up getting divorced, and I'll be back where I started. Alternatively, she could love it and want to stay in Syria, which is definitely not what the whole exercise was about. So he wants to try and ensure that Syria just does not happen. But I also think that he wants to hedge his bets. So he's only told her about, oh, there's not running water and there's only intermittent electricity. Syria's really bad at the moment. He didn't say anything about ISIS, about being bombed by the Russians, the United States and the United Kingdom. He didn't say anything about the inner turmoil that they have at the moment and basically a very bloody civil war. And this is because he did want to hedge his bets. He wanted to say, well, don't come, but he doesn't want to tell her the really terrible things in case she has to come to get this whole show on the road and to get his visa application began and to keep alive the chances of him finally getting to America. He wanted to just kind of put her off, but not completely. My next reason is that he never ever took Terri to task on disrespecting his religion, and I think the reason that he never even brought it up with her or said to Avery, Avery, talk to your mum because this is a little bit too much, is because he wanted to put Mr. Nice Guy on, and the reason he wanted to do Mr. Nice Guy was so that he still had Avery on side. You can still tell somebody your point of view and that you feel they're being slightly disrespectful without being rude. So I'm not imagining him to say, Terri, stop now, you're out of order, but I imagine him to say, Terri, let's sit and talk about this. Let's sit and think about where we are and how we should be behaving. But that never happened. And then the final one is the wedding. Now, I've done a little bit of research today and I've discovered that in order to get to America, you don't actually need to be married. You can get married once you're in America. And I think it's this information that's pushing him to try not to get married. Let's look at this. He knew he hadn't spoken to any clerics, any imams, anyone at a mosque, and he hadn't sorted out the wedding. Yet he still went wedding dress shopping with Avery. And then he mentioned it quite last minute. And even when Terri and Avery said, right, let's get dressed, let's go out, let's hit those mosques, let's hit those clerics up, let's get this wedding on the road, he didn't seem to be really interested. He decided, oh, I don't think it works like that. It's not the same as in America. And lo and behold, they managed to do it. They managed to get the wedding sorted out. And it's very interesting to me. He really wanted to drag his heels. I think he's very worried about marrying Avery, and I do think that he wants to get into the States, but I think he wants to be a little bit more sure that he's getting into the States before he actually gets married. For he knows that once he does, he owes us $6,000 to get divorced. There's lots of questions about Omar in my mind. He seems very quiet. He doesn't really put forth a strong personality. He tells us that he's a student dentist. Is he? How do we know? He's 26. How long does it take to study? I had a little look how long it takes to study in the States. And in addition to your 4-year degree, you then have to do 3 years of on-the-job training. So imagine he started his degree at 18. He'd be well finished by now. I realise they're in a war, and I realise that wherever he was going to university was all disrupted and so on, but it still does pose questions. Why did he not just go to maybe Iraq or Iran or another country and continue studying there? I do find it quite sketchy. Is it possible he's just scoping out Avery and her mum to see how much money they have? After all, Avery would have to sponsor him if he were to come to the United States, if he were even able to get in. At the moment, as we know, there are travel bans for all Syrians going to the States, but who knows when that might change? I mean, I think whilst the war still continues, there's every reason to imagine that's going to continue. Whether or not Trump gets in, I think whoever else gets in won't necessarily relax that rule. However, if the war were to finish tomorrow, say, or in 2 months, maybe in a year's time, that rule may be relaxed. And I think he's waiting for that moment to pounce into America. I just think he wants to line up his ducks, and he wants Avery there on ready, so that when he actually wants to get married, when it's actually worth it, when he can actually get in, that's when he will spring. So guys, that's my take on Omar. I think it's all a sham. When I first saw Omar and Avery, I thought they made a cute couple, but the longer this has gone on, something just isn't quite right. I think he realises as soon as this marriage happens, Avery's prepared to follow him into war zones, wherever he wants to go, and I just don't think he wants that. So I'm going to wrap up by saying, Omar, we all see you coming, and you get more and more sketchy with every passing week. I also quickly want to say a mini apology to Terri. In my early videos, I did dig into Terri because I thought, why can't you control your daughter? She's only 19, but I now see she is kind of a super brat. She's very unruly and she's very single-minded. If she wants to do something, she sees no logic. She just walks towards whatever she wants to do. So I think Terri has gone with her on this trip to try and change her mind little by little and to open her eyes properly, which maybe was the right tack. I guess after all, you do know your own daughter. And I also think that she was drinking in front of Omar and Avery to try and make Avery see what she was missing and to remind her the good times you can have with alcohol. I think that this was not done just out of disrespect for their culture, but I think this was done to maybe try and poke a stick at Omar a bit and see if we could get him to jump out of his rabbit hole, and also to say to Avery, look what you're missing, this is a great time. Although in my experience, Long Island iced tea is never a great time. I think Terri's heart's in the right place, but I'm hoping to be able to convince my daughter to see sense and to wait a little while, and for us all to get to know Omar and decide properly if we think he's the right person. And that is everything from me. Thank you guys for all of your support, and thank you so much to everyone that subscribed. If you haven't done it yet, come on, put a smile on Ebird's face and press that red button. And also I'll be doing hopefully a weekly story time, but I'm going to start my first one this week, so stay tuned. Thank you so much for listening. You've been listening to Ebird Online. Ciao for now.